Hey everybody, failed entrepreneur back again. Another video. It's the weekend, recorded in my basement, and want to do a video today on article I just read, but kind of something I've been talking about since all this Corona stuff has been going on. So I'm one of those people. I was Chicken Little, who back in like January, Christmas, was reading about what was going on in China and Wuhan and telling friends and family, like, you better watch out, you better get ready. There's this thing coming and it's not going to be pretty. And um, for once, for once in my life, I guess I turned out to be right, unfortunately. But while while Corona was slowly like building up the media hype and slowly becoming knowledge of it widespread, there was some theories going around on the internet that basically there was a possibility that this whole Corona hype or fear or pandemic may be overblown. Um, and there's some evidence for this in the past and some new evidence that came out right now. So basically, there was a study just done by some scientists in Stanford, and I guess they took some random tests of volunteers to see who had antibodies for corona already. And it turns out this was back in early April, I think, kind of when this crisis kind of started, I guess you could, well, back a couple weeks ago. And it turns out, I think, of this random sample, 3,000 people, maybe like almost 3% had the antibodies for corona if adjusted for, I don't know, population inflation or just, if they adjusted for like national numbers. If that study holds true, it turns out there's a lot of people who had corona, were asymptomatic, and had no idea because the antibodies are already in their system. And the article says that that is the case, then there's a good chance that this is all overblown, that corona is already an epidemic and it's already out in the wild and it's already running through everybody. And there's people dying from the virus, no doubt. But basically, if we inflate the sample size of infected, the death rate goes down tremendously, and so the virus is a lot less deadly than we would think. We have a pretty good idea of who dies from corona, and well, even with that, there's some funny business with who really is dying from corona and who's dying from other symptoms. But anyway, the point is, if you have millions of people infected and the only ones dying are the ones in the hospital we know of, the virus is not nearly as dangerous or deadly as we think. And that's what they're basically saying here in this recent study, that we had bad information, I guess you could say, and we acted not poorly, but we were maybe a little misguided because we didn't quite understand the scope of the virus and what has been taking place. Now, this goes back to some of the things that I had been saying earlier and had been reading earlier back in like March and February, which is basically there's you can't really, it's hard to go back and prove it, but there is a case to be made that there's a good chance that a lot of people may have had corona already and didn't even know it, which is again maybe what this Stanford study was trying to say. So basically, um, I think I had it, right? Bear with me for a second. But go back to December and January of this year, right? If you had a if you had a persistent cough, if you had some stuffiness, if you had a respiratory ailment, right, that just kind of wouldn't go away, was a little suspicious, a little memorable or just whatever, there's a good chance that Corona may have been in the wild lot longer before we knew, and that you may have even had it and had no idea. Um, and I think that may have happened to me. I'll just say, back around December, I remember specifically that for about 3 weeks, maybe even four, I had this kind of, it wasn't the flu and it wasn't really a cold. It was just kind of this kind of a wheezy cough, right? My throat wasn't really sore, but I just remember there was this kind of it was a respiratory thing that I just couldn't shake. It wouldn't go away. It was the weirdest thing, and I again not really a fever. I didn't have any shakes or nothing like that. No body fluctuations in temperature. Not cold, not hot, not shivering. But it was just this kind of hack, this kind of cough that like it just would not go away. And I remember telling people at the time, "This is the strangest thing. I can't shake this thing. I don't know what this is. And flu season's going on, and I'm in education, so I want to make sure I'm not calling into work because making sub plans is the worst thing. Um, Never was that bad, but it just wouldn't go away. And then when the corona stuff hit, and it's like, well, maybe it's already here. It's like, that happened to me, right? I had those symptoms. It was worse than normal, and it was just this persistent thing that wouldn't go away. Turns out a lot of people had those symptoms back in December or January. Maybe you or somebody you knew was like that. Somebody went back and looked at flu data season this year. It turns out, because of course we keep track of that, right? For whatever reason, the flu, if you look 2019 to 2020, the flu season this year was pretty bad. There's a lot more reported cases of flu. If you just even go back and Google old news articles from December and January, you'll see a lot of headlines, a lot of articles. Um, you know, Higher than average flu season this normal, abnormal flu season this year. Doctors perplexed. Flu cases are above the norm. There was a lot of reported flu cases. And then there's also lots of articles of doctors commenting that there's a lot of people coming in with flu-like symptoms that is not showing up as flu. And so if you put two and two together, you don't got to be rocket scientists to see there's a good chance that that could have been undiagnosed coronavirus. And again, that people just had no idea because it was still a Wuhan, China thing, and there's no way it could jump here right now. So again, it's really hard to prove, but if you add up the if you add up the anecdotal evidence, is what I'm trying to say, it's highly possible, right? It's not impossible, and if that's again the case, that kind of calls into all the quarantining and social distancing. It puts it into question because again, was this the right call? Were we again making a decision half cocked with only incomplete information? Testing was a huge issue, so it was probably hard for the government in a lot of countries to really realize just how much corona was out there because testing was definitely lagging. Now, no doubt, I mean, there's certain areas you can't question whether quarantine is a good idea. I mean, look at New York and Italy and Wuhan, and you know the death total is high. The United States just hit a new record the other day in corona deaths, which is unfortunate. I think we had 2,400. Was it 2,800? Close. I made a video a couple days ago on like deadliest days in American history, military battles, and the bloodiest day is Battle of Antietam. 3,600 Americans died in that battle, and Corona's getting close. Every day we're getting up to that number. But turns out, anyway, I'm rambling now. This is the rambling part of my video. That on average, I guess in a normal day, I should have put it in that video, but on a normal average day, you got about I think 7 to 8,000 Americans just dying because of old age, cancer, smoking, whatever. So we're not that level yet. But if you look at like military, like D-Day, Pearl Harbor is what I was comparing it to. The number of deaths we have from Corona is comparable to those battles. So it is kind of like a war zone out there. I'm not saying that at all, that it's not. But, and it's a Stanford, going back to the article saying the quarantine that we're doing now might just be ineffective because, again, you may have had Corona already. And if it's that widespread, social distancing really is not going to do too much. to either flatten the curve or prevent it from happening. It's already ripped its way through society. What's done is done. Um, Again, you can get corona again, which is scary and does give room to be cautious. There's just so much we don't know about this virus, and that's kind of what is scary, right? That something kind of, I'm not a doctor, but new like this could pop up and really throw the medical world for such a loop. Um, it's that's almost as unnerving as maybe the virus itself. Just how hoodwinked we all are by this thing and how much we really don't know. I'm sure 2020 hindsight looking back, we'll probably get a much closer picture of what really happened with this thing. But right now, everyone's just reacting to try and deal with the sick and all that stuff. So it's hard to tell right now. We're in the middle of it. But again, there's a good chance that, again, you may have had it. Someone you knew probably had it. It's been around a lot longer than we think. And again, if the number of infected is multiple times, hundreds of times greater than what we suspect, the virus is not nearly as deadly as you make it out to be. And then that takes some of the fear out of the social distancing and the quarantining that we're all doing right now. So we will have to wait and see. This case is not closed. But again, just wanted to kind of put it out there, and I'll link the article in here if you want to read it yourself. But it's an interesting thing. Like I said, if you had that weird flu back in like the winter, you know what I'm talking about. There was something going around, and it wasn't flu. It was a good chance, like I said, you may have already had coronavirus and you didn't even know, and you're still here. Go figure that, right? All right, that's all for today. This is Failed Entrepreneur. I got to go. I got a lot of stuff to do. Busy day. I know you do too. Thanks for watching, though. I'll catch you later.